During the first epical revelation, some 500,000 years ago, with the arrival of the planetary prince and his staff, the early races were presented with a moral law known as the Father's Way. This code consisted of 7 commands. You shall not fear nor serve any god but the Father of all. You shall not disobey the Father's Son, the world's ruler, or show disrespect to his superhuman associates. You shall not speak a lie when called before the judges of the people. You shall not kill men, women, or children. You shall not steal your neighbor's goods or cattle. You shall not touch your friend's wife, and you shall not show disrespect to your parents or to the elders of the tribe. This was the law of Dalmatia, the city of the prince, for almost 300,000 years, only to be disrupted by the Lucifer rebellion. And many of the stones on which this law was inscribed now lie beneath the waters off the shores of Mesopotamia and Persia. It became the custom to hold one of these commands in mind for each day of the week. During the second epical revelation, nearly 40,000 years ago, with the arrival of Adam and Eve, the Father's Way was once again presented to mankind, with the law of Eden being little different from the 7 commandments of Dalmatia. But with the default of the Adamic mission so soon after it had begun, the light of the better way once again faded away over time. Revealed truth was threatened with extinction, which prompted the third epical revelation. 1973 years before the birth of Jesus, Melchizedek, an emergency son, incarnated to keep the light of truth alive until the arrival of a bestowal son who would rescue the planetary titles from forfeiture and uncertainty. The cardinal precepts of his teachings were trust and faith. The 7 commandments he taught his followers were patterned along the lines of the ancient Dalmatian supreme law and very much resembled the 7 commands taught in the first and second Edens. You shall not serve any god but the Most High, Creator of heaven and earth. You shall not doubt that faith is the only requirement for eternal salvation. You shall not bear false witness. You shall not kill. You shall not steal. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not show disrespect for your parents and elders. Melchizedek came to achieve 2 tasks: to keep alive on earth the truth of the one God, and to prepare the way for the subsequent mortal bestowal of a paradise son of that universal Father. He taught elementary revealed truth at Salem, which later became known as Jerusalem, for 94 years. And during that time, made a formal covenant with Abraham. This covenant of Melchizedek with Abraham represents the great planetary agreement between divinity and humanity, whereby God agrees to do everything. Man only agrees to believe God's promises and to follow his instructions. Heretofore it had been believed that salvation could only be secured by works, sacrifices, and offerings. Now, Melchizedek again brought to the planet the good news that salvation, favor with God, is to be had by faith. The lives and experiences of the men and women who ventured forth from Salem, Mesopotamia, and Lake Van to enlighten the tribes of the Eastern Hemisphere present a heroic chapter in the annals of the human race. But the task was so great, and the tribes were so backward, that the results were vague and indefinite. We who today enjoy the advantages of the art of printing little understand how difficult it was to perpetuate truth during these earlier times, how easy it was to lose sight of a new doctrine from one generation to another. With the departure of Melchizedek, the great organization built up at Salem nearly disappeared, though the traditions of these days were what Moses built upon when he led the Hebrew slaves out of Egypt, and once again presented the better way of the one God over all. Moses was the most important individual world teacher and leader between the times of Melchizedek and Jesus. And Jesus was the paradise bestowal son that Melchizedek had come to prepare the way for. The life and teachings of Jesus of Nazareth represents the fourth epical revelation to this world. Some 2,000 years ago, Jesus once again presented to mankind the concept of God as the universal Father. The essence of his teaching was love and service. He was, in fact, a living revelation of the universal Father. He who has seen me has seen the Father. Tuesday morning in the temple, the week that Jesus was arrested, a Pharisee asked him this question: "Master, I am a lawyer, and I would like to ask you, which, in your opinion, is the greatest commandment?" Jesus answered, "There is but one commandment, and that one is the greatest of all. And that commandment is, Hear, O Israel, the Lord your God, the Lord is one. And you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul, with all your mind and with all your strength. This is the first and great commandment. And the second commandment is like this first. Indeed, it springs directly therefrom. And it is, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. There is no other commandment greater than these. On these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets." On Thursday evening, later that same week, at the end of the Last Supper, after a few moments of informal conversation, Jesus stood up and said, "When I enacted for you a parable, indicating how you should be willing to love one another, I said that I desired to give you a new commandment, and I would do this now as I am about to leave you. You well know the commandment which directs that you love one another, that you love your neighbor even as yourself. But I am not wholly satisfied with even that sincere devotion on the part of my children. I would have you perform still greater acts of love in the kingdom of the believing brotherhood. And so, I give you this new commandment, that you love one another, even as I have loved you. And by this will all men know that you are my disciples, if you thus love one another. When I give you this new commandment, I do not place any new burden upon your souls. Rather do I bring you new joy and make it possible for you to experience new pleasure in knowing the delights of the bestowal of your heart's affection upon your fellows. I am about to experience the supreme joy, even though enduring outward sorrow, in the bestowal of my affection upon you and your fellow mortals. When I invite you to love one another, even as I have loved you, I hold up before you the supreme measure of true affection. For greater love can no man have than this, that he will lay down his life for his friends. And you are my friends. You will continue to be my friends if you are but willing to do what I have taught you. You have called me master, but I do not call you servants. If you will only love one another as I am loving you, you shall be my friends, and I will ever speak to you of that which the Father reveals to me. You have not merely chosen me, but I have also chosen you. And I have ordained you to go forth into the world, to yield the fruit of loving service to your fellows, even as I have lived among you and revealed the Father to you. The Father and I will both work with you, and you shall experience the divine fullness of joy if you will only obey my command to love one another, even as I have loved you. And the revealed truth presented here comes from the fifth epical revelation. Nearly 60 years ago, the Urantia Papers were first presented to the planet. And these papers constitute the most recent presentation of truth to the mortals of this world. The Urantia Papers differ from all previous revelations, for they are not the work of a single universe personality, but a composite presentation by many beings. But no revelation short of the Universal Father can ever be complete. All other celestial ministrations are no more than partial, transient, and practically adapted to the local conditions in time and space. While such admissions as this may possibly detract from the immediate force and authority of all revelations, the time has arrived on this world when it is advisable to make such frank statements, even at the risk of weakening the future influence and authority of this, the most recent of the revelations of truth to the mortal races of Urantia.